Willa Thompson pushed open the tall doors to the ballroom of her family home in the upscale suburbs of Chicago, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and resolve. The elegant birthday party for her mother Evelyn came to a standstill as all eyes locked on her, and the thick folder she carried under her arm. This family has been lying to itself for too long, and tonight it ends with the truth Dad left behind, she said, her voice ringing clear across the silent room. The crystal chandeliers cast soft light over tables draped in white linen, and loaded with silver platters of gourmet food. Guests in tailored suits and evening gowns froze mid-conversation, their champagne flutes hovering in the air. Evelyn Thompson sat at the head table in a shimmering navy gown, her perfectly styled silver hair framing a face that had aged with worry over the past year. Next to her stood Marcus Thompson, Willis' younger brother, his arm around his wife Sarah, their two young children fidgeting in formal clothes. The string quartet had stopped playing, and the sudden quiet made every breath audible. Willa felt the weight of every stare, but she kept her posture straight, shoulders back, the way her father had taught her during their secret talks in his study. She walked forward, the folder now in both hands. Angelina waited just outside the doors, giving her the space she needed for this moment, but Willa could feel her partner's presence like a steady anchor. 4 years Willa had built her life as a 32-year-old senior associate at a top Chicago law firm specializing in estate planning, ironically, the very field that now exposed her own family's deceit. She had discovered the secret transfers 6 weeks ago, when routine paperwork for settling her father's estate crossed her desk. While grieving Robert Thompson's heart attack 10 months earlier, Evelyn and Marcus had quietly used a power of attorney signed during his final hospital stay to shift the family real estate holdings business shares and nearly $4 million in investments into Marcus' name alone. The reason they cited in private memos was simple and cruel: Willis' life as a lesbian made her unfit to carry the Thompson legacy. Clients were conservative, they said the family name could not be tainted. Willa reached the center of the room and placed the folder on the nearest table, opening it with deliberate care. "This is Dad's original will, dated 3 weeks before he died," she announced, holding up the notarized pages. "It leaves controlling interest in everything to me, because he knew what you were planning, Mom. He knew how you felt about me and Angelina, and he chose differently." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Marcus stepped forward, his face flushing red. "That is a forgery," he snarled, reaching for the papers, but Willa pulled them back. "I had it verified by 3 independent experts, and the lawyer who witnessed it is on standby if you want to call him right now." Inside, Willa fought the storm of emotions. Part of her wanted to run back to the life she had built with Angelina, the cozy apartment in Lincoln Park, the quiet evenings where they cooked together and talked about everything except this family wound. Angelina, a 29-year-old elementary school teacher, had been her rock since they met at a charity event 3 years ago. Their love was the one thing that felt pure and right, yet it had cost Willa invitations to holidays, subtle exclusions, and now this final betrayal. She remembered the night her father had slipped her the sealed envelope in the hospital, his voice weak but clear. "Protect what is yours, Willa. Love is not a mistake. Do not let them rewrite my wishes." That memory fueled her now as the party that was meant to celebrate Evelyn's 60th birthday and quietly crown Marcus as the new head of the Thompson empire ground to a halt. Sarah pulled the children closer, whispering something to them while aunts and uncles exchanged shocked glances. One uncle, an old business partner of her father's, muttered about family matters staying private, but no one moved to leave. They were hooked on the unfolding drama. Willa continued reading key clauses aloud, the ones that explicitly named her as primary beneficiary and voided any subsequent transfers made without her consent. The room grew colder with each sentence. Evelyn rose slowly, her chair scraping loudly. "How could you do this to us on my birthday?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "We only wanted to protect the family. You and that woman have never understood what it means to carry our name." The words stung like a slap, but Willa held her ground. "This is not protection, Mom, this is erasure. Dad saw me for who I am, and he chose justice over your prejudice." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Justice? He is the one who built this empire with sweat and long nights. You walked away at 22 when you announced your lifestyle and never looked back. Now you want to take it all because of some paper." Willa felt her pulse quicken, but she kept her tone even. "I never walked away. You pushed me out every time I brought Angelina home. Every holiday became a battlefield of questions and silence. Dad regretted that distance, and he fixed it the only way he could. The guests began to shift uncomfortably, some slipping toward the exits, but most stayed rooted in fascination. Willa glanced toward the doors where Angelina now stood visible, her dark eyes full of quiet strength. That look gave Willa the courage to keep speaking. "The party is over for lies," she said, folding the will back into the folder. "We can discuss the legal steps tomorrow, or we can face this as a family right now. But the fortune transfer ends tonight." Evelyn sank back into her chair, tears streaking her makeup. Marcus slammed his fist on the table, making glasses jump. "You are tearing us apart for what, a relationship that goes against everything we believe." Willa felt the familiar ache of guilt twist in her chest. She had always been the good daughter, the one who excelled in school, followed the rules until the day she could no longer hide who she loved. The price had been high: lost weekends, strained calls, and now this public rupture. Yet standing there with the document that carried her father's signature, she knew the cost of silence would be higher. Her own identity erased, her future with Angelina threatened by financial dependence on people who saw her love as a flaw. The room hung in tense silence, the birthday cake untouched on its silver stand, the candles flickering as if waiting for a wish that would never come. Willa took a deep breath, ready for the storm she had just unleashed. The silence stretched until a distant clatter of silverware from the kitchen broke it like a starting gun. Marcus lunged forward again, his hand outstretched for the folder. But Willa sidestepped him, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "Touch this and I call the police for interference with legal documents," she warned, her voice low but firm. Sarah stepped between them, her face pale. "Marcus, please, not in front of the kids." The children stared wide-eyed at their aunt, the woman they had only met a handful of times at forced family gatherings where conversation stayed superficial. Willa felt a pang for them too. They were innocent in this war of adults, yet they would pay the price of divided holidays and whispered explanations later. Evelyn dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin, her shoulders shaking. "Robert would never have done this to me," she said, her voice trembling. "He loved this family." Willa set the folder down carefully. "He loved all of us, Mom. That is why he wrote this. He knew you and Marcus met with the lawyer 2 days before he passed, when he was too weak to argue. You convinced him to sign papers that stripped me out. I have the hospital records and the timestamps." The room erupted in murmurs again. An aunt in the back row clutched her pearls, whispering to her husband about how disgraceful it was to air dirty laundry at a celebration. Willa ignored them, focusing on her mother. "You told me at Dad's funeral that blood is thicker than anything. But blood does not mean erasing who I am." Flashbacks flooded Willa's mind as she stood there, the scent of expensive perfume and roasted beef mixing with the memory of her coming out at 22. She had sat at this same dining table, her hands clasped under it, while Evelyn cried and Marcus called it a phase. Her father had stayed silent then, but later in private calls he asked gentle questions, and eventually met Angelina for coffee without telling the others. That support had been her lifeline. Now it was her weapon. Angelina stepped fully into the room, crossing to stand beside Willa, her hand brushing Willa's arm in silent solidarity. The touch grounded her, reminding her of the life they had built together, the apartment filled with books and plants, the weekends volunteering at the youth center, where Angelina taught art to LGBTQ teens. That world felt miles away from this gilded cage of expectations. Marcus turned his anger toward Angelina. "This is your fault," he spat. "You turned her against us." Angelina met his gaze without flinching. "I love your sister. I did not turn her into anything she already was. The only thing turning anyone against anyone is the hate you keep feeding." Her words, calm and measured, cut deeper than shouts. Willa squeezed her hand, grateful for the reminder that she was not alone. Evelyn looked at Angelina with open disdain, the same look she had given her the first time Willa brought her to dinner 3 years ago. The evening had ended with Evelyn excusing herself early and Marcus making crude jokes later in texts. Willa had cried in the car that night, but Angelina had held her and said, "We build our own table, love." The guests began to trickle out, some offering awkward goodbyes, others lingering to eavesdrop. One of Marcus' business associates, a man who had golfed with their father for decades, approached Willa. "This will destroy the company reputation," he murmured. "Clients will pull out." Willa met his eyes. "Then they were never loyal to begin with. Only to an image." The man backed away, shaking his head. Inside, Willa wrestled with the moral weight. Was she the villain here, destroying her mother's remaining years for a principle? Was the money worth the pain? She saw in Evelyn's eyes the answer came swift and clear: no, but letting the lie stand would cost her soul. Her father had chosen her in that will because he saw the price she paid daily to live authentically, the stairs at work, the family vacations. She skipped the quiet nights when she wondered if she was selfish for wanting both love and legacy. Marcus pulled out his phone, dialing their family lawyer. "We will fight this," he said into the receiver, his voice shaking with rage. Willa nodded. "I expected that. But the will is ironclad and the transfers were made under duress. Dad was on morphine. The lawyer will confirm." Evelyn stood again, moving toward Willa with outstretched hands. "Please, baby, think of what this does to us. We can work it out privately. Forget the party. Just come home." The plea tugged at Willa's heartstrings, the little girl inside her yearning for the mother who once braided her hair and read bedtime stories. But that mother had also said things like, "I cannot tell my friends about you, it is too embarrassing." The conflict tore at her, the choice between blood and truth, both demanding a terrible price. Angelina whispered in her ear, "You do not have to decide everything tonight." But Willa knew the clock was ticking. The party was already ruined, the cake melting, the music gone. She turned to the remaining guests. "Thank you for coming, but I think it is best if we end this here." Some nodded sympathetically, others shot her dirty looks as they gathered coats. Outside in the cool Chicago night air, Willa and Angelina walked to the car hand in hand. Willa leaned against the door, taking deep breaths. "I did the right thing, right?" she asked, her voice cracking for the first time. Angelina pulled her into a hug. "You stood up for your father's wishes, and for us. That is never wrong." But Willa knew the real battles were just beginning, the lawsuits, the family rift, the internal voice that whispered maybe forgiveness would have been easier. The drive back to their apartment was quiet, each lost in thought about the cost they had just paid, and the ones still to come. Back at the mansion, Evelyn sat alone at the head table, staring at the untouched cake, her dreams of a united family shattered by the daughter she could never fully accept. Marcus paced in the study, already plotting his next move, the fortune slipping through his fingers. The night that began as celebration ended in fracture, and for Willa the awakening had only started. Morning light filtered through the blinds of their Lincoln Park apartment as Willa sat at the kitchen table, the will spread out before her. Angelina placed a mug of coffee in front of her and kissed the top of her head. "You barely slept," she said softly. Willa rubbed her eyes. "Every time I close them I see Mom's face. The guilt is eating me alive." Angelina sat across from her. "Guilt for what? For honoring your father's last wish, for refusing to let them erase you." The words were kind, but Willa still felt the pull of divided loyalties. She had always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over arguments, even when it meant swallowing her own pain. Now she had blown the family apart in one evening, and the consequences were already arriving in the form of missed calls from relatives and a terse text from Marcus threatening legal action. They spent the day reviewing documents, Willa explaining the legal avenues to Angelina, the motion to invalidate the transfers, the potential for mediation. Angelina listened patiently, though her own worries surfaced in quiet moments. As a teacher, she had seen too many students rejected by families for being themselves. She feared Willa would carry that same scar forever. "What if they never speak to you again?" she asked during lunch. Willa set down her fork. "Then I lose the family I thought I had. But I keep the one I chose with you." The statement was brave, but inside Willa questioned it. Was love enough to replace decades of shared history? The price of her decision was becoming clear: the isolation, the legal fees, the emotional exhaustion. By afternoon they drove back to the mansion for the promised family meeting. Evelyn greeted them at the door, her eyes red-rimmed. "Come in," she said, her voice flat. Marcus and Sarah were already in the living room, the children with a sitter upstairs. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Willa and Angelina sat on the couch opposite them, the folder between them like a barrier. Marcus started immediately. "We are offering you a settlement. 30% of the liquid assets if you walk away from the will and sign a non-disclosure." Willa shook her head. "Dad wanted me to have control for a reason. He saw how you treated me after I came out. Remember the Thanksgiving when you told me to leave early? Because my girlfriend made everyone uncomfortable. That was not love, it was control." Evelyn reached across the coffee table. "We were scared, Willa. The world is hard on people like you. We wanted to protect the legacy so your brother could carry it on with a normal family." The word normal landed like a blow. Angelina stiffened beside her but stayed silent, letting Willa lead. Willa felt the old shame rise, the years of therapy, the nights she wondered if she was broken. But she pushed it down. Normal is not the issue, Mom. Fair is. Dad trusted me with this because he knew I would not use it to hurt anyone. Marcus laughed. Except you are hurting us right now. The business is losing contracts already. Clients are asking questions. Willa met his eyes. Then tell them the truth. Tell them your sister is lesbian and still capable of running things better than you, because I actually care about ethics. The argument escalated. Sarah spoke up for the first time, her voice shaking. We have children, Willa. Their future is tied to this. Do you want them to grow up poor because of your pride? Angelina replied gently. No one wants that. But teaching them that love is conditional is far more damaging. Willa watched her partner with pride. Angelina had her own scars from a conservative family in Texas that had cut her off years ago. She knew the cost better than anyone. The meeting dragged on for hours, accusations flying, revelations spilling. Evelyn admitted they had pressured the hospital lawyer to expedite the transfers. Marcus confessed he had always resented Willa for being the favorite until her orientation changed everything. Each confession chipped away at Willa's resolve, but also strengthened her conviction. The price of staying silent would have been her self-respect, her relationship, her future. By evening they left without agreement but with a court date set. In the car, Angelina took Willa's hand. You were incredible today. Willa sighed. I feel like I am losing pieces of myself with every word. The internal conflict raged on the daughter who wanted her mother's approval versus the woman who refused to beg for it. That night in bed, Willa lay awake replaying the day. Angelina slept beside her, breathing steady. Willa traced the curve of her shoulder, thinking about the happy moments they shared, the weekend trips to the lake, the laughter over silly movies. Those moments were the reward, the reason the fight mattered. Yet the family wound festered. She wondered if there was a way to win without destroying everything. The moral dilemma weighed heavy, right and wrong blurred by love and loyalty. Outside, the city lights of Chicago twinkled, indifferent to the hearts breaking in the quiet apartment. Willa closed her eyes and made a silent promise to her father. I will see this through no matter the cost. The weeks that followed blurred into a cycle of legal meetings and sleepless nights. Willa threw herself into the case, gathering affidavits from hospital staff and financial experts. Angelina supported her every step, cooking meals, listening to rants, and reminding her to breathe. But the strain showed in small ways. Angelina canceled a gallery showing to stay home one weekend, her own career as a teacher and part-time artist taking a back seat. Willa noticed, and the guilt compounded. I am dragging you into this mess, she said one evening over takeout. Angelina smiled softly. We are in this together. That is what partnership means. The words soothed, but Willa knew the price her partner paid, the worried looks, the quiet tears when she thought Willa was asleep. A major confrontation came at the mediation session in a downtown office. Evelyn arrived with her own lawyer, Marcus, beside her, looking smug. The mediator, a neutral older woman, laid out the facts. The will appears valid, she said, but the transfers raise questions of undue influence. Evelyn broke down. I was protecting my son, she sobbed. Willa has her career, her life in the city. Marcus has the grandchildren. The family name needs continuity. Willa felt the familiar twist. Continuity or control, she asked. Because I am not straight, I am not worthy. The mediator called for a break. In the hallway, Angelina pulled Willa aside. You are shaking. Do you want to pause? Willa shook her head. No. I need to see this. But inside she questioned everything. Was her stand hurting more people than it helped? The children would remember their aunt as the one who fought their parents. Her mother might never recover. The moral choice felt like walking a tightrope, one side justice, the other compassion. Back in the room, Marcus revealed a new angle. We have emails from Dad saying he was confused in his final days. He might have wanted to change the will. Willa countered with her own evidence, the handwritten note from her father attached to the will. It read clear as day. My daughter Willa has my full trust. Do not let prejudice win. The mediator nodded. This strengthens her position. Evelyn looked at Willa with something like defeat mixed with anger. You were always his favorite even after you chose that life. The words hung heavy. Willa replied quietly. He chose me because I never asked him to choose. I loved him as he was. The session ended without resolution, but the lines were drawn deeper. That night Willa and Angelina walked along the lakefront, the city skyline glowing across the water. Angelina shared her own story again the day her parents changed the locks after she came out at 18. "I built a new family," she said. "You can too." Willa leaned into her. "But I wanted both." The betrayal cut deepest when an aunt called later that week. She had sided with Marcus, offering Willa a small sum to drop everything. The offer felt like another rejection. Willa declined and the aunt hung up without goodbye. Each cut reminded her of the price paid for authenticity, friends lost, relatives distanced. Yet with Angelina beside her the awakening grew. She realized chosen family was not lesser, it was stronger, because it was honest. The social prejudice followed her everywhere. At work, colleagues whispered about the family drama, one even suggesting she take a leave to avoid bad publicity. Willa refused, standing taller. Her actions at the office inspired a junior associate to come out to her own parents. Small victories amid the chaos. But the internal battle continued. In quiet moments, Willa wondered if she was selfish for prioritizing her truth over family harmony. Angelina sensed it, and one evening they sat on the balcony talking for hours. "Love is not a trade-off," Willa said finally. "Dad knew that." The conversation solidified her resolve. The cost was real, but so was the freedom. As the legal case moved toward court, Willa prepared for more confrontations, knowing each decision carried weight that would shape the rest of her life. Court day arrived with gray Chicago skies mirroring the mood. Willa entered the courthouse with Angelina at her side, both dressed in professional black. Evelyn and Marcus sat across the aisle, their lawyers shuffling papers. The judge, a stern woman in her 50s, called the session to order. Willa took the stand first, her hands steady as she recounted the discovery of the transfers, the conversations with her father, the clear intent in the will. Cross-examination was brutal. Marcus' lawyer pressed on her relationship, implying instability. Willa answered with facts. "My personal life has no bearing on my ability to manage an estate." The courtroom fell silent when she added, "I am the same daughter." He raised the one he trusted with his final words. Angelina testified next, her voice calm as she described the years of exclusion, the impact on Willa. "We have built a life of love and stability," she said. "Denying her inheritance because of who she loves is discrimination, pure and simple." Evelyn took the stand next, her testimony laced with tears. "I love my daughter, but the world is not kind. I wanted security for the grandchildren." The judge listened without expression. Willa watched her mother and felt the old pull. The woman who taught her to ride a bike now sat broken by choices made in fear. After court, they met in a private room for one last attempt at settlement. Evelyn reached for Willa's hand. "Please, let us be a family again." Marcus stayed silent, his earlier fire dimmed by the evidence presented. Willa felt the crossroads. Forgiving could mean partial inheritance, shared holidays. But it would require her to accept the prejudice as a condition. She looked at Angelina, then back at her mother. "I want that too, Mom. But not at the cost of my dignity." The meeting ended in stalemate. Outside the courthouse, reporters had gathered, tipped off by someone in the family. Willa answered a few questions briefly. "This is about honoring my father's wishes and equal treatment." The publicity added another layer of pressure. Social media divided, some calling her brave, others accusing her of greed. That evening in their apartment, the weight crashed down. Willa cried for the first time in weeks, the tears releasing months of tension. Angelina held her, rocking gently. "You have paid enough," she whispered. The awakening was complete. Willa realized the true betrayal was not her actions, but the family's refusal to see her fully. She decided to push forward with the case, but offered one olive branch, a letter to Evelyn outlining her love and hope for reconciliation without conditions. The response came 2 days later, a short note saying they needed time. The silence hurt, but it also freed her. Willa threw herself into work and her relationship, planning a small trip with Angelina to the mountains. The price had been high, but the reward was authenticity, a life without hiding. Marcus called once, trying a final plea, but Willa stood firm. The drama had tested every bond, and in the fire Willa emerged clearer about what mattered. The judge ruled in Willa's favor 3 months later. The transfers were invalidated, the original will upheld. Willa gained control of the majority assets with provisions for her mother and brother to retain portions for living expenses. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, but Willa felt only quiet relief. Evelyn left without speaking, Marcus glaring as he gathered his things. Outside, Angelina hugged her tight. "You did it." Willa smiled through tears. We did it. The victory tasted bittersweet. She had the fortune, but the family she grew up with felt gone. That night they celebrated quietly at home with takeout and a movie, the simple joy reminding Willa why she fought. In the following weeks, Willa made decisions that reflected her growth. She set up a trust for her nieces and nephews, ensuring their education regardless of family ties. She offered Evelyn the family home for life, a gesture of goodwill. Marcus refused to speak, but Sarah sent a cautious thank you note, opening a small door. Willa accepted the partial reconciliation, knowing full healing would take years if it came at all. With Angelina, they bought a small house in the suburbs closer to the lake, a place to build new memories. Willa's internal conflicts resolved into peace. She no longer questioned her choices. The price of betrayal and confrontation had been steep: lost relationships, strained ties. But the awakening was worth it. She had chosen truth over comfort, love over approval, and in doing so found strength she never knew she possessed. One evening, as they sat on their new porch watching the sunset, Angelina turned to her. Are you happy? Willa nodded. Happier than I thought possible. The family I lost taught me to value the one I chose. The story of that birthday party became a turning point, the moment prejudice met resolve and love won. Willa sometimes drove past the old mansion, seeing lights on and wondering about the lives inside. But she no longer carried the guilt. Her father's will had not just secured her future, it had freed her to live it fully. In the end, when family demands you hide your truth to keep their peace, and love stands ready to catch you if you fall, does fighting for what is right make you the hero, or the villain who broke what could never be fixed?